A very good morning, friends. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. So I welcome everyone to Sriram IAS. This is a very special session where we are targeting your mains exam 2023, and these weekly sessions help you to cover all your important current affairs for your upcoming mains exam. So this session is conducted every weekend on Saturdays and Sundays. The timing for this session is 10 to 12:30 a.m. 12 to 10 to 12:30 p.m. This session is of 2.5 hours. Now in this session, me and Sanat sir, we both take the session where I take important current affairs like from the subjects like polity, environment, international relations, whereas Sanat sir take economy, science and tech, art and culture, and other miscellaneous portions. So this is the bifurcation of these two subjects. Let us now know a little about the courses that is offered on Unacademy, Sriram IAS. So Sriram IAS is a channel partner of Unacademy, guys. Here we have launched a comprehensive batch for UPSC 24, where you can cover all your prelims, mains, as well as interview in one subscription. So all your comprehensive coverage will be covered in one subscription. Okay, so along with this you will get answer writing sessions, you will get mentoring sessions, and then with all of these you will also get essay preparation and optional. So everything is covered under one subscription. These are the list of optionals that we offer at Sriram's IAS. We have recently introduced geography and anthropology as well. We have introduced geography as well as anthropology as well. So this is the details of Sriram's IAS. Now in order to join the course, you can click the buy subscription link, which is mentioned in the comment box below, in the description below. And if you use this code Srirams, you will straight away come under the guardianship of our director Sriram sir. Along with this, you will get a flat 25% off on all your subscription. There will be flat 25% off on all your subscription if you use this code at Unacademy. So this is basically the list of toppers that has cleared UPSC CSE exam for the year 2022. Now out of total 85 in the complete list, there are more than close to 85 students from our classroom program. And out of the top 20, we have Garima Lohia, Kanika, and Abhinav Sivaj. So guys, in this session I will be taking and starting with environment and ecology. In this session, we will learn that how to tackle questions from this area and how to supplement your answers for mains exam from the area, from the subject environment and ecology. I have already taken international relation. There are 3 videos of 2.5 hours each. You can find that in the playlist mentioned in the description box. In the month of July, I will be covering every aspect of environmental and ecology, linking it with all important current affairs, and then presenting you a holistic session that includes PYQs. Along with PYQs, you will also develop your writing skills in this session. So this is the main focus of this series. I am repeating myself once again that every Saturday and Sunday this session happens. The timing for these sessions are 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m., 12:30 noon. Is it clear? And I take environment, ecology, international relation and polity. Sanat sir will take economy, science and tech, art and culture and other miscellaneous areas of current affairs. So my name is Anshum Verma, guys. These are my credentials. If you're watching this, you can also join my Telegram channel, Anshum UPSC and beyond. In this channel, you will get all important necessary current affairs, which I make usually for the Unacademy Plus course. Then guys, in this video, we will be looking for environment GS3. Okay. Now before starting, if we broadly look at the syllabus of environment and ecology. So the syllabus broadly covers 2 topics in GS3: conservation, environmental pollution, degradation, environmental impact assessment. So these are the topics of GS3, environment and ecology. And then disaster and disaster management is also included. Now if you broadly see that complete environment and ecology comes under these 2 topics, and if I say broadly environment and ecology is under this one holistic topic. However, this holistic topic is a very wide topic. Like when it says conservation, it includes everything in conservation, whether it be your natural ecosystems, your biodiversity or any other important aspect of environment. Then environmental pollution, again this is again a very wide term. It includes everything which is happening around pollution nationally as well as internationally. So this topic may include all important summits / conventions. Like some importance are the COPs, the recent discussion on the climate change. It includes all global and national initiatives in the field of energy, environmental conservation, etc., etc. So all these, the first topic is very wide. And then degradation and environmental impact assessment. So the subject or the topic is very short, but the coverage of this syllabus is very wide. because these topics are way too wide to be clubbed under these two topics. Okay, so moving with the first topic for today's discussion, I am starting with the basics of environment and ecosystem. This is from where any environment discussion starts. Now, before coming to this topic, let us first see that from this topic, what kind of question has been asked in the past. If you have the idea of the type of question that has been asked in the past, you can look into what to study. It will help you to plan your preparation in a better format. So in this topic, particularly environment and ecosystem, there has been one question that has been asked. The question says, define the concept carrying capacity of an ecosystem as a relevant to an environment. So how carrying capacity of an ecosystem is linked to the environment, and then explain the understanding of this concept is vital for planning and sustainable development of the region. Now, if you see the question, it is a little open-ended, especially the first part. So in this, you have to explain what is ecosystem, what is the carrying capacity of the ecosystem. Then you have to talk on the lines of absorptive capacity, then assimilated capacity, along with this you have to talk in the lines of carrying capacity. So you can link absorptive capacity and assimilative capacity with carrying capacity. Okay, so let us see this first chapter for our discussion, ecosystem and environment. So when I say these terms, environment, first you should know the basic definition of these terms, environment. So when you are writing an answer where you are writing a key definition, try to use a definition which is having a legal stature. That means you can use your Environment Protection Act and then how that act defines environment. So section 2 of Environment Protection Act defines environment includes the components which are biotic and abiotic in nature that surrounds any individual. So broadly, this is how the environment is defined. It includes all biotic as well as abiotic components. So very quickly, let us see what are biotic and abiotic components. Biotic components are all those living creatures around you, which include the flora, the fauna, the microscopic organism, the human interaction, etc., which is around you is part of your biotic interaction. Then abiotic interaction that shapes your environment include the sunlight, the temperature, the pressure, then all non-living things around you, like if you are in your home, there is an environment. If you are in a jungle, there is an environment. So an environment is inclusive of all these two components. Then how an ecosystem is defined. So basically, an ecosystem is a interlink of all the interactions of biotic and abiotic factors in your environment with each other. So it is a system that has developed over the period of time. So an ecosystem is a geographic area. It not only includes just the area, but the balance of the connection that is there between the biotic and abiotic components of an environment. So ecosystem is a geographic area where the plants and animals and other organisms as well as the weather, landscape, work together to form a bundle of life. So we all know that what are the three broader systems from which the earth is made up of. So the earth is made up of three broader systems. We have lithosphere, hydrosphere and atmosphere. The interaction of all these together is where the life exists, and that is biosphere. So what is lithosphere? Basically, lithosphere is the solid land part of your earth. The crust, the solid part, is known as the lithosphere. What is hydrosphere? Hydrosphere is the water or the aquatic part of the water part of the planet, which include oceans, sea, which include rivers, and anywhere the water which is available, it is part of hydrosphere. Then atmosphere. Atmosphere includes the air that we breathe, which include a bundle of gases. It include our ambient temperature, etc. is part of the atmosphere. So interaction of all these three spheres of the planet Earth only makes up a biosphere. So biosphere is that part where all this interaction is happening. Now, any one component or any one sphere missing in this interaction, you will not have life that is possible. So life becomes impossible without these three interactions. So the key definition, like for example, if you want to know an example of a ecosystem, there are many examples. For example, a coral reef. I will elaborate what are coral reef, but for now you understand that coral reef are something which is inside the ocean. They are a set of rocks which exist beneath the water, beneath ocean water. Okay, these set of rocks supports a symbiotic relationship between two organisms, zooxanthellae and coral polyp. These two organisms with their symbiotic relation, they turn the complete system as a ecosystem. So there is a different level of interconnectedness that develop there. So this is an example of an ecosystem. Then tropical rainforest. Tropical rainforest is another example of a ecosystem. Okay. Then ecology. What do you mean by ecology? Now basically the scientific study of the interaction of organisms with their physical environment is known as ecology. So ecology basically is the study of the ecosystem. What is an ecosystem? How different components of environment are interacting and building one connection is an ecosystem, and the study of that ecosystem is known as the ecology. Like for example, bee and flower. There is a mutualistic relationship where the bees collect the nectar from the flowers for food. In the process, they facilitate plant reproduction by transferring the pollens. So the study of this complete system is ecology. Okay. Then moving ahead, understanding what functions does a ecosystem plays. The first important function of an ecosystem is productivity. So the ecosystem convert energy from the sun into the biomass, supporting the growth, reproduction of plants, providing food for other organisms, etc. This is the first important aspect of the ecosystem, the productivity. So in any connection or in any ecosystem, there is a flow of energy that happens. So this flow of energy starts from your primary consumers, then it is transferred from that primary consumer to different parts. It transforms from primary consumer to the producers to the primary consumers, and then primary consumers to secondary consumers, and then so on. This interconnectedness is the flow of energy, and in any ecosystem there is a conversion of energy that is happening. At a first stage, the producer is making, or it is transforming that energy in a kind of a biomass which supports growth, reproduction of plants, and then that feeding on those plants, the other animals get that energy from the plants. The second is energy flow. Ecosystem transfer energy from one organism to another organism through feeding relationship. Okay, there is a, like I have told you in the first point, there is a productivity. With that productivity, the energy transfers from different chains, hence making a kind of a I'm so sorry, hence making a kind of a food chain. So energy flow, in energy flow, the ecosystem transfer the energy from one organism to another through the feeding relationship, or what we call as the food chain. And when there are multi-connected food chain, then what exists is a food web. Like a grass is eaten up by a grasshopper. Grasshopper is fed by any bird. Then this bird is fed by a snake, and then this snake is fed by an eagle. So this is what a food chain looks like. However, in reality, there is no such one single food chain that exists. There are multiple interconnected food chains that exist. Then guys, next is nutrient cycle. Now the next function of an ecosystem is nutrient cycle. Okay, so just a second guys, I am facing a kind of a glitch in the comment box. Just hold on. Okay. So the next function is nutrient cycle. Now ecosystem continuously recycle and redistribute all the nutrients. Okay, and which it is a kind of a transfer of nutrient from one place to another, not just from one place to another, but from one energy level or one way it is taken and absorbed, and then it is consumed, and then further it is processed and then transferred into the other part. So this ecosystem continuously recycle, redistribute nutrients, ensuring their availability for different organisms and maintaining a balanced nutrient cycle. Like you have done your different type of biogeochemical cycles. You have done your different types of biogeochemical cycles like carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle, phosphorus cycle, sulfur cycle, etc. All these cycles are an example that how ecosystem transport energy from one place to the other, or in one form to other form. Then decomposition. This is another very important function of ecosystem. Now guys, imagine it this way. If the environment, there is no decomposition that is happening. Let's say everything which is lying as a dead decaying matter, it stays there. It is not getting decayed. Imagine what would have been the condition. अगर कोई जानवर मरता और उसकी बॉडी वैसे ही पड़ी रहती और वो कभी डिकम्पोज ना होती. So imagine the condition that would have been as a result. So the nature has its own mechanism. The nature has already made a kind of organisms which are known as the saprophytes. So these saprophytes are nothing but the decomposers. The decomposers that decompose, or that means it reduce the dead organic matter and thereby mixing that old matter back into the ecosystem, where further again from that cycle this ecosystem will get into any biogeochemical cycle, and then the nutrient redistribution will start again. So you have done this, for example, like in carbon cycle, in nitrogen cycle, we have studied this, that what is the relevance of the decomposition in the earth. Then another important function of ecosystem is stability. So when we say a ecosystem means the interconnection between different organisms and their abiotic environment. Biotic and abiotic environment, and the connection is the ecosystem. So this ecosystem basically provides a homeostasis. Okay, homeostasis. What this word mean, homeostasis? It means a balance. So the nature has created a natural balance in maintaining their structure, functions, and despite the disturbances that the humans are making in this the natural ecosystems, the nature again try to control or maintain that balance. This is another function. Then support of life. Support of life. It is because of this ecosystem you develop the habitats, you develop food, water, other important resources, etc., which basically work, and it basically maintains a necessary condition for the existence of life. The life is only possible on planet Earth because of the balance that this ecosystem has created, and because of that balance it supports life. It creates that ambient condition for which the survival and the well-being of many species is possible. Then guys, after understanding different functions of the ecosystem, you should also know that different type of threats that present day environment faces, or the present ecosystem faces. So there is a three biggest threats that has been the most dangerous threats or to any ecosystem are mentioned here. First, the habitat loss and the fragmentation. What do you mean by habitat loss? That means destruction of the natural habitat of all the species. Fragmentation of, that means breaking up, segmenting the different types of different types of ecosystem into many ecosystem, and thereby displacing the species, reducing their ability to survive, like what we are doing with the wild animals. The urbanization and the expansion of cities is shrinking all the natural habitat for all major species across the globe. So when this is happening, you will see that many habitats are destructed, which ultimately disturbing the main balance or the interconnectedness of the ecosystem. Then climate change. This is another issue. Now this is not the first issue that we are hearing about this term very recently. Climate change is impacting, and guys, all these threats are linked to each other. They are linked in one way or the other. Okay. They are linked in one way or the other. So the rising temperature disrupts ecosystem, leading to a habitat loss. Then this further, the rising temperatures will further trigger global warming, and with global warming you will have further aggressive impacts, and that vicious cycle will further trigger more climate change that will further impact more ecosystem. So once a distortion happens at some level, the distortions have a multiplier impact on the other, and then the cycle continues. It is very difficult to stop the cycle. So climate change is the second biggest threat to the ecosystem. The third is pollution. Now this pollution can happen anthropogenically, as well as this pollution can happen naturally. Now what is more fearful or what is more impacting is the anthropogenic pollution. What are the regular sources of natural pollution? Like volcanoes, natural global warming. There is something known as natural global warming, volcanoes, forest fires. All these are examples of natural pollution. But when I talk about anthropogenic pollution, the list is endless. Okay, the list is endless. The list includes the air pollution, water pollution, groundwater pollution, marine pollution, plastic pollution, chemicals, etc., etc. Then genetically modified pollution. We are creating so many genetically modified organisms, जिनको GMOs भी बोलते हैं. It is also one of the cause of pollution. So we'll study about all these in the upcoming lecture, and some of them in today's lecture only. Then after these three biggest vicious circle of the threats to ecosystem, there is one more which is known as the invasive species. Now what are invasive species, guys? Invasive species is a kind of a species which do not belong to that particular area. That means that species which is, it can be either flora or it can be fauna, or it can be a microscopic animal or organism. So if any such invasive species is introduced in a foreign in a foreign land, that means that land where it is introduced does not belong to that species, this species is known as an invasive species. In maximum cases, in most of the cases, invasive species always harm the foreign ecosystem. In maximum cases, but there are some cases where one invasive species can have a positive impact on the ecosystem as well. But in most of the cases, the invasive species can disrupt the ecosystem, it can disrupt the native species, creating an imbalance, the ecological imbalance at that place. Then another important threat to biodiversity and ecosystem are the loss of important keystone species. Now what do you mean by keystone species? Now these keystone species are basically the one which have a very important impact on a food chain or a food web. Like for example, an important example of a keystone species is tiger. So let's say when the population of tigers start reducing, how it will impact the complete food chain? The population of tiger falls, the population of deer increases. When population of deer increases, the population of grasses decreases. When population of grasses decreases, the population of insects and other small organisms that feeds on insects, their population will also decrease. And when insect decrease, it will further impact pollination, the natural pollination. So imagine killing of tiger can impact even the new regeneration of the system. It impacts the pollination of the system. So this is what the role of important keystone species is. Every ecosystem has some or the other kind of every ecosystem has some or the other kind of important keystone species. Like for marine, in marine ecosystem we have a different kind of you can say a different kind of keystone species. Then for tropical rainforest there is a different kind of keystone species, and so on. Then the next threat to the ecosystem is the land use change, or how we are changing the land patterns in the different parts of the world. Like for example, along with land usage change, like we are cutting down the forests, converting them into agricultural tracts, we are expanding the urban centers, now even shrinking the agricultural land. Then we are not even stopped here, we have also started building up land in the ocean, which is known as reclamation of land reclamation. Have you seen the Palm Jumeirah in Dubai? A palm shaped island that has been built by the architects there, a palm shape. Then China is doing this. China is building good number of air bases in the South China Sea, good number of air bases in other different parts of the world, like in East China Sea, near Taiwan, near Philippines. In all these areas, China is making artificial land. So don't you think you are again disrupting the marine ecosystem and thereby impacting the land use change even on the terrestrial ecosystem? Then another threat to ecosystem and biodiversity is the disease and pathogens. Okay. Another important change is disease and pathogens. So over the past few years, there is so much outbreak of so many diseases in different parts of the world. Like the spread of pathogens were blamed for wiping out of many civilizations. Like for example, Inca civilization of South America. Have you heard of this civilization? There used to be a very old civilization, Inca civilization. So when the Europeans, especially the Spaniards, the people from Spain, they started colonizing the South America, which is the Latin America, along with them they brought rats there. Along with them they brought their microscope, that means the diseases there. So there are many diseases which were very common in Europe, but the South Americans have never witnessed those diseases. But when they got or come in contact with these diseases, it led to the spread. It spread like a plague, and a complete civilization has been wiped out from South America. The reason is the colonization and the spread of diseases and pathogens. So imagine, don't you think all these diseases, pathogens, etc. are also a kind of a result that is a threat to ecosystem? Like for example, we are keeping lions and other big cats like cheetah, we are keeping them in one confined area. Like where we have kept our lions in India, Gir National Park, and where we have kept cheetah, very close by, Kuno National Park. Now, what is happening? Naturally, lion is not confined to stay in one place. Lion roams at a very big area, and it is not that lion cannot, a lion cannot survive in any different part of India. But what is the result of this action? The result is there is less genetic diversity that is being developed in lions. Less genetic diversity that has been developed in lions. So this is the main issue. Then genetic pollution. Now we are the modern biotechnology. With the advancement of biotechnology, we are changing and manipulating the life. We are changing and manipulating the nature even at a very microscopic level. Like for example, how we are genetically modifying the crops. We are genetically modifying animals in the labs, and very recently we have started genetically modifying the humans as well. Like for example, just 2 days back there was a news, a boy born in UK which is from a technology which is known as mitochondrial replacement therapy, 3-parent baby. So all this interference that we are doing is basically polluting the genes. So all these genetic pollution and the introduction can impact the native species. It can impact the genetic diversity and the survival. Like one example that I have given from lions. Okay, so this is one thing. A very good morning, Mayur. Then another threat to the ecosystem and biodiversity is lack of environmental awareness. Now guys, although there has been efforts to create awareness, but still these efforts are not enough. Like for example, there is a continuous branding done by the local MCDs to separate your wet waste and dry waste. They have even started using the means, okay, how to segregate your wet waste and dry waste. But ultimately, you also know that all the waste, they land up at one place. Yes or no? All the waste, it lands up at one place. So there is hardly any segregation. Why this is happening? Because lack of environmental awareness. Now even if people wants to try to carry out a proper waste management, etc., still they are failed to create this kind of awareness among the regular citizens of the country. So lack of environmental awareness is also responsible for the threat of the ecosystem. Like there are many such cases where the forest fire has happened because of the humans. It was because of the man-made reason. A good amount of forest land has been burnt into ashes, and the population of organisms living there have also been burnt into ashes. So all this is because of the lack of proper environmental education. And then the last threat to environmental ecosystems and biodiversity is your unsustainable development. So practices, policies lead to ecosystem degradation, loss of biodiversity, long-term environmental consequences, which ultimately leads to overexploitation. We tend to consume more despite our needs. Okay, like Mahatma Gandhi ji has already said this, that there is enough on this planet for man's need, but there is not enough on this planet for a man's greed. So the unsustainable development that is going on is another reason that we are creating a threat to our ecosystem. So what could be the way forward? How we can resolve the things? If a question comes on these lines, how you will write a solution? So first of all is climate change mitigation and adaptation. We will try to implement all the measures that will help us to reduce greenhouse gases. Then switching to cleaner mode of energy, the renewable energy. Okay, switching to the cleaner mode of energy, that is renewable energy. Then developing climate resilient strategies so that we can build up our cities with less temperature, with less heat. But what it needs is a systematic and scientific planning. So climate change mitigation and adaptation is one solution to conserve our ecosystem, to conserve our environment. Then strengthening legal protection and enforcement. Now in India, we know that we have ample legal protection in terms of laws, We have all the necessary important laws in every domain. Like we have a overall Environment Protection Act, then we have a Wildlife Protection Act, then we have a Air Pollution and Water Pollution Act, etc. All these legal protection, it helps to combat illegal wildlife trade, poaching, unsustainable resource extraction, ensuring the conservation of the vulnerable species. Then collaborative conservation initiatives. So we need to bring in partnership, collaboration among the government, organizations, committees, communities, and indigenous people to implement integrated conservation approaches and promote sustainable development practice. We need to develop certain practices that are more sustainable in nature. Like we know what are SDG. We have even set some SDGs for this. Then sustainable development planning. So we need to integrate our land use, integrate our development, urban design in such a manner so that it can have a balance with the environmental conservation. Okay, so there is a balance that can be created. All right. So a sustainable developmental planning is only possible if we have a balanced approach. If we can make out conservation efforts and development both can be done simultaneously if we follow a balanced approach, like using certain technologies which are more environmental friendly in nature, then carrying out research and monitoring. So better research, better understanding of the system, the ecosystem, the environment, good data collection, understanding the biodiversity, adopting evidence-based conservation strategies. All these things can help to further solve the problem that we are facing at the global level. And then what we require is international cooperation. So the world is one common unit. Okay. Now if you see it in different dynamics, like if you see it politically, it is divided on the political lines. Everywhere the humans are contesting and fighting for one or the other. Some are fighting for religion, race, caste, creed, etc. and even sex, like determining their rights associated with sex, the transgender and their movement, etc. But we forgot that we are living on one common planet, and a problem in any country is a problem that will impact in one way or the other, and the impact will come on the complete planet Earth. Okay, so we need to foster international cooperation by increasing sharing and collaboration among different agencies, different countries, so that we can address the global challenges in conserving ecosystem, biodiversity, and ensuring coordinated efforts across the borders. This is the way forward. Then guys, there is a very important committee that you can use in your mains 23. Any question that comes from ecosystem, you can use the recommendation of TSR Subramaniam committee, which has recommended at a multi-facet recommendation. Like the first important recommendation is creation of an Indian Environment Service, like a separate designated service which will work in the or managing the resources for the environmental sector. However, we do have a environment ministry. We have a separate Ministry of Environment. Okay, We do have a separate Ministry of Environment, but the thing is, what is more required is to have a designated set of services we can recruit some qualified people from the domain of environmental sciences that can work with the government and different sectors and even with the people for the environmental management. Then there is a need to widen the scope of Environment Protection Act. Like, for example, whenever the Delhi pollution game starts in every winter, you will see all the states, they start blaming each other. All the states, they start blaming each other. The Delhi will say that it is the mistake of Haryana. Then they will say it is the mistake of Punjab. Now they have a government in Punjab, so they say all the mistake is from Haryana. There is no mistake happening in Punjab. So this type of politics is ultimately harming the complete environmental systems. So there is a need to widen the Environmental Protection Act. Then addressing the threats to ecosystem biodiversity, which requires a comprehensive and collaborative approach. So there is a need to have a better understanding of the ecosystem, better understanding of the biodiversity. And ultimately, even the TSR Subramaniam Committee has recommended for promoting sustainable practice, protecting the critical habitats, mitigating climate change, engaging communities that we can safeguard our ecosystem. So all these points we have already seen in the slides, I have already discussed them in the above slides. Then guys, one more important aspect is the concept of green GDP. This is something which is very much in news, and you can add them in your mains answer writing. Green GDP. Now what is green GDP? It is a kind of economic growth that also considers the growth and its impact on environment. Like, for example, for construction, you are building up bricks. You are developing construction bricks. So this is a very important aspect for any economy. But if you manufacture the bricks in such a way so that it has the least environmental impact, so it is what we can classify this type of construction as a green GDP. So what is your regular GDP? The value of all goods and services produced in an economy. But what will be the green GDP? It will be the holistic value of all goods and services that are produced considering the impact on environment, and then its value calculated it will become the green GDP. So it will provide a more holistic view to economic development by considering the environmental cost and the benefits associated with the economic activities, and also helping to promote sustainable growth and balances both economic and environmental considerations. So creating a balance between economy and environment on both the end. So in this concept, you can even mention environmental Kuznets curve. Now what is environmental Kuznets curve, guys? Basically it is a relation between the environment on one axis and development. So as you increase the development, there will be more environmental degradation that will start happening. So as more and more development will happen, more degradation will happen. But there will be a point where you will reach all the development, and with that development, now you have all the technology that can help to mitigate the impact of development on environment. So after that level, the environmental degradation starts falling and you can still have more development. This is your environmental Kuznets curve. So whenever there is a concept of green GDP, you can even use this in your answer. Then guys, let us see that what are the factors that further contribute to green GDP. The first important factor is sustainable energy production. Increasing the share of renewable energy sources and reducing the dependence on fossil fuel. This is how you can increase the contribution to green GDP. Next, resource efficiency. Efficient use of resources to produce goods and services, minimizing the waste and environmental impacts, environment protection expenditure. Like when I call about resource efficiency, basically resource efficiency means to minimize the waste, every kind of a waste that is generated in any kind of production activity. If you can minimize it to zero level, it is what is known as the optimum utilization of the resources. Then environmental protection expenditure. Now what are environmental protection expenditure? From every budget, you can invest or you can take certain amount that will specifically dedicated to cater the needs such as the pollution, the needs such as conservation, etc. So every time if we allocate some good percentage of our budget, it is the part of the green GDP. Then sustainable and scientific agriculture. You can use this term, scientific and sustainable agriculture. So under this, you can adopt certain practices that can promote soil health. Like in India, you have a soil health card, a soil report card, right? With this report card, you can get all your micro and macronutrients checked. If you know that your soil is deficient in this mineral, you will try to add that mineral only. You will not tend to add any other fertilizer or mineral in the soil. The next is waste management. So implementing effective waste management system that includes recycling, waste reduction strategies, then solid waste management. This is very much important. If you are tackling on the green GDP, this is very much important. And you know what we are right now struggling with. Like each major metropolitan city has made up so many landfill sites in the bordering areas. Then green infrastructure. Now what do you mean by green infrastructure? An infrastructure that is more eco-friendly, that is more self-sustaining. Like for example, some examples of green infrastructure is installing rainwater harvesting, installing urban rain gardens, then using the type of construction quality, which is more environmental friendly. Like for example, in present context, we have some type of constructions like the Maivan construction. The Maivan construction, now guys, in this type of construction, in Maivan construction, basically the buildings are made up of some hollow bricks. So when a building is constructed with this type of hollow bricks setup, the building is overall a little cooler in temperature, and then it is more strength. It has more strength. So which makes the durability of these buildings, it enhances the durability of the buildings. Okay, so developing green infrastructure. Then how you can further contribute to green GDP? Conservation of natural resources, protecting and preserving and then restoring our ecosystem, forest, water bodies is important to have the sustainable use of the resources. Along with this, environmental awareness and education is also important if you want to promote green GDP. Then the circular economy. Now, if you want to embrace the principle of circular economy, so the resources should be recycled, the resources should be reused, and we should ensure the minimum possible wastage in all the resources. Then sustainable business practices. So we need to encourage and adopt sustainable practices so that the impact on environment can be reduced significantly. But we all know that the present world is moving towards the concepts like green wasting. Have you heard of these concepts like green wasting? Now, what are these green wasting means? It means utilizing all your company structure or the corporate structure and showcasing or branding it to the world that you are doing so many things for the environment, but in reality you are doing nothing. This is known as the green wasting. Okay. Now guys, we will see some important terms associated with green GDP. The first important term is green economy. So what do you mean about green economy? It is a sustainable economy that aims to reduce the environmental risk and promote sustainable development without harming the environment. So this type of economy is known as a green economy. It is very much closer to green GDP. So green GDP is the contribution from the economy, and once this contribution is 100%, then it is said to be a green economy. Then the green national accounts, this is another important term. Now this is the integration of your environmental information into the national account, and then to measure the economic impact of environment. Like for example, the pollution that we are carrying out. Do you know that with the pollution, each year we are creating a more burden on the healthcare. That means more people are falling ill. Their dependents, all the regular middle class family will have more expenditure in their healthcare, less income available for important aspects like education, standard of living, etc. So calculating the impact of environment and the economy, or having a more in-depth research on the economic calculation, is what the green national accounts for, or the green national accounts is for. Then environmental accounting. It includes both physical counting to assess the resource state and monetary valuation to determine the tangible and intangible values. So physically accounting to access the resource state and the monetary valuation for both goods and services which are clean in nature, it is part of your green accounting. Then natural resource and cost. So we have already seen in green GDP, it considers the use of the natural resources associated with the cost, which include the healthcare expenses, pollution, livelihood losses due to environmental crisis, etc. All these are the part of the natural resource cost. So what is the way forward? Now, if you want to promote green GDP or green economy, what is the solution? So the solution is enhancing the data collection. So we should have more accurate data in terms of environmental degradation, in terms of the cost associated with the degradation, etc. Making our data more comprehensive can solve the problem. Then methodological standardization. What does this mean? To develop methodologies for the green GDP calculations. Making initiatives so that we can move in the direction of green GDP. Then strengthening our institutions, for example, building capacity to provide support for the green GDP implementation. Then having a multi-stakeholder engagement. That means including different dimensions, bringing in people from different dimensions, which include the government, the academia, civil society, and addressing the other challenges. Then policy integration. So we need to incorporate the green GDP into the policy making and also the resource allocation. Then further, if we can spread this awareness and education regarding the green GDP and regarding the green economy, it can further promote sustainable development. Then another solution could be that we can have an international cooperation so that the developed countries can provide funds to all developing as well as the LDCs countries. Then policy alignment. First of all, if we are building up the policies for the green GDP, what we need is to align all our policies, economic policies, with the principles of the green GDP. Then continuous improvement, like regularly updating the green GDP methodologies and indicators. Then long-term commitments, making long-term commitments, like long-term vision for integrating the green GDP into national accounting systems. The next unit that guys we are starting is again a very important unit, that is the conservation of biodiversity. So how, after understanding the first unit, environment and ecosystem, we will now see some important aspects of conservation of biodiversity. This will help you to tackle any question that comes from the conservation part, the biodiversity part. So these are the questions which has been asked from this unit in UPSC exam. So like there was a straightaway question, how does the biodiversity vary in India? How is the Biological Diversity Act 2002 helpful in conservation of flora and fauna in 2018? Then define the concept of carrying capacity of an ecosystem as relevant to an environment. Then explain how understanding of this concept is vital while planning for sustainable development of a region. So before starting this, let us first understand that what is the definition of biodiversity. Let us first understand this. So according to United Nations Convention on Biodiversity, which is CBD, it is a very important convention guys. You must have studied this convention in your environment classes. So United Nations Convention on Biodiversity define biodiversity as the variability among the living organisms from all sources, including diversity within species, between species and ecosystem. That means how there is a balance, the diversity in species. Like for example, do you think that the humans, all humans are the same? However, we classify all humans under one common single species. So there is a different diversity even among the humans. Similarly, there is a different diversity in plants, flora, fauna, and in all living organisms. So all that diversity collectively is known as the biodiversity. So this is the definition according to the United Nations Convention on Biodiversity. So in India, the Biodiversity Act of 2002 defines biodiversity, or the biodiversity conservation is the protection and the management of biodiversity to obtain the resources for the sustainable development. So basically the biodiversity is the biological variety and variability of life on the earth. It is the measure of the variation at the genetic level, the species level, and even at the ecosystem level. Like for example, the tigers of two different ecosystems are not same. Like for example, a Bengal tiger is way different from a tiger which is available in Indonesia. And obviously there is also a diversity in two different Bengal tigers. So are you getting this? So biodiversity is a very complex measure, and that is why there is a need to conserve and protect the biodiversity, and that is why we are doing this unit, the biodiversity conservation. Now, what is the objective? The main objective of biodiversity conservation is to preserve the diversity of the species, sustainable utilization of the species, sustainable utilization of the ecosystem. So at three levels: one at the species level, other at the ecosystem level. Okay, then all the biodiversity are in a form, they are interconnected, and that is why they create different type of ecosystems. जितनी भी biodiversity है वो एक तरीके से interdependent है, and this interdependent is creating the ecosystem. So any imbalance, if you try to eliminate one biodiversity of that region, it can lead to the collapse of the complete ecosystem. Then environmental degradation. Now this is the biggest reason why there is a need for biodiversity conservation. So if all the species of plants and animals will become endangered, it will cause a degradation in the environment, which will further threaten the human being from their own existence. Then guys, we will understand what are the different types of biodiversity conservation. The first is in situ conservation, or which is ultimately in site conservation. Now what do you mean by in site conservation? Basically, it is to give protection to any species in its natural habitat. In its natural habitat. Okay, this means in situ conservation, like giving protection for a tiger in a national park. Now national park is an area that is designated, but for a tiger it is a regular jungle. So the tiger can freely roam and carry out and can survive naturally in that region, but ultimately through the legislative measures, the government is giving protection to the tigers of that region. So this type of conservation strategy is known as the in situ conservation. Then there is something known as the ex situ conservation. What do you mean by ex situ conservation? It is taking the species from outside its habitat and then protecting that species in a unnatural habitat. Now this unnatural habitat can be a artificially created habitat, like for example the botanicals or the zoo, the zoological parks, the botanical gardens. Zoological parks are basically a way to conserve the species outside their natural habitat, and that is why it is termed as ex situ conservation. So these are the types of conservation. Then let us understand a little about biodiversity of India, and from that you will realize that why it is important to conserve the biodiversity in India. So first of all, India is one of the important biodiversity hotspot in the world. India at present has 4 biodiversity hotspot out of the 36 total hotspots in the world. Which are those 4 hotspots in India? Eastern Himalayas, Indo-Burma region, Western Ghats, and the Sundarbans. Now basically, what is a hotspot? I am coming to that term just after 2-3 slides. I'll explain that in detail. Then we are also a country that has a very diverse geoclimatic condition. With this diverse geoclimatic conditions, we have a very high mega biodiversity. Like India has just a land of 2.4% in the world, but we account for close to 8% of the recorded species in the world. So we are one of the 17th mega biodiversity nations of the world. Then we have a high endemic diversity. What do you mean by the term endemic? Endemic means we have many species that are exclusive only to the territorial jurisdiction of India. And we have 6,500 such plants and other species that are endemic to India. That means it is only found in India, nowhere else. Then the tropical forest. India has a good portions of the tropical forest, mostly the evergreen and the deciduous forest. So the highest level of terrestrial biodiversity is found in the tropical forest, which almost hosts for 80% of the species. And guys, that is why every year, like where do we have the tropical rainforest? We all know that deciduous forests are almost everywhere. But where are the locations of the rainforest? The Western Ghats, the Northeast, Andaman and Nicobar, and some pockets of Himalaya. All these regions have high, thick density of the tropical rainforest. Now, if you see the species availability, you will find that only these regions have the maximum species diversity, which is close to 80%. Then India also have a high floral diversity. That means we have almost 45,000 of plant species. 33% are exclusively endemic. Like 33% of 45,000 are only found in India but nowhere else. Then in terms of the flowering plants, we have 15,000 species of floral diversity. And then out of the total floral diversity, we have 1,500 plant species, which is presently in endangered category. Okay, the species which are presently in a endangered category. Then When it comes to animal diversity, we have even different type of the faunal diversity or faunal diversity. Like in terms of animal, we have 91,000 species of recorded global fauna, which amounts to 6.5%. So कोई कम species नहीं है हमारे पास. 60,000 species of insects, 2,400 species of fishes, 1,200 species of birds, where there are more than 372 species of mammals, reptiles, amphibians and whatnot. And every year you will see that new species are discovered. Each and every year you will find some of the new species which are still being discovered. So this is happening everywhere, guys. Okay, across the globe there are new species that emerge, or which humans are not aware of, but some new researches maybe in the untouched part of the jungles result in such discoveries where new species are added. Then some recent global initiatives and reports that you can add in your mains exam. Like a very important report, the Global Assessment Report. According to this report, the overall biodiversity and ecosystem services that we assess, 25% of the plant and animal species are threatened with extinction. So out of every 100 species, 25 are on the verge of getting extinct. Then there are 680 vertebrate species that has gone extinct from the 16th century till now. 9% of the domesticated mammal breeds used for food and agriculture were lost by 2016. Then Living Planet report. This is something that I have skipped. Living Planet report by WWF. They suggest that mammals, birds, amphibians, reptiles, fishes, they have experienced a almost 69% drop in last 50 years, almost close to 50 years. Close to 70% drop in all species. So imagine how aggressively we are changing the world order, we are changing the global ecosystems. Like this report has highlighted in India that the overall decline in the population of honeybees and 17 species of freshwater turtles have been recorded only from India. Then warm water corals, almost 50% of the warm water corals are already lost. And with this pace, with 1.5 degree Celsius increase by 2050, it is expected that 70 to 90% of the coral we will be losing by this year. Only 37% of the rivers which are over 1,000 kilometers long remain free flowing. Rest are poisoning threats to the fish migration. That means, for example, you see Ganga after Allahabad and Varanasi. Do you think that the fishes can survive in that water? Yamuna, the Yamuna is almost finished even before Delhi. It is not able to hold any species anymore just after coming out of the Himalayas. Then ocean sharks have witnessed a reduction of 71% in last 50 years. So see the threat that we are facing in the world. IUCN reports that more than 41,000 animals worldwide are threatened with extinction. So this is the basic information and some reports that you can highlight at an international level. Next, biodiversity hotspots. Now, what is, like I have just told you, India has 4 biodiversity hotspots. India is part of the 4 biodiversity hotspots: Western Ghats, Eastern Ghats, Sundarbans, and the Indo-Myanmar region. That means Northeast and the part of Northeast. So what is a biodiversity hotspot? This term was coined by a German scientist, Norman Mayers, in 1988. Basically, it declares all that region as a hotspot where there is a high risk of destruction, where there are less species or endemic species are found. So across the world there are 36 such hotspots, and out of that 4 are in India. So India accounts for 2.4% of the Earth's land surface, but they hold more than half of the world's plant species as endemic. So in these 2.4% of the global hotspots, more than half of the world's plant species are endemic, that are found nowhere else. And then around, again closer to it is 50%, 43% of bird, mammal, reptile and amphibian species are endemic. So there is a very much needed approach that is required to conserve these biodiversity hotspots, which ultimately give protection to all the endemic species. So that is why the biodiversity hotspot as a concept is important. So if I quickly highlight what is the importance of biodiversity hotspot, first, preservation of the endemic species. It will help us to conserve all those species which are found nowhere but in that small region. Then developing a healthy ecosystem. So in order to sustain a better ecosystem, a healthy ecosystem, there is an importance for the conservation of the biodiversity hotspot. Then the conservation of the natural resources. So once you are protecting the natural resources, in a way you are protecting the endemic species and hence protecting the biodiversity hotspot. Then controlling the population. That means you have to even work on the invasive species of that endemic region. Any foreign species introduced there are not allowed. Like there are many countries in the world, guys, they don't even allow you to carry any kind of seed from your land. Like if you want to carry some pulses, okay, dalein, if you want to carry Indian pulses to Australia without any export, or you are carrying it in your bag like for the domestic use, you are not allowed. You cannot carry any kind of seed of a flowering plant because they ban all these things. They do not allow any such invasion in their country. It is known as the environmental invasion. Then there are the habitat for many species. All these biodiversity hotspot region are very rich in the diversity, so they give the habitat to many species, so their protection becomes important. Then also all the biodiversity hotspot gives and provide access to the food. Then they are a good source for the pharmaceutical medicines, the pharmaceutical drugs. There are many resources that you extract from these biodiversity hotspots. Then what are the threats at present to all the biodiversity hotspot? The unplanned and poorly managed tourism. Like there are many reports these days, going on Kedarnath is not a spiritual trend, rather than people are going there for fun. you will enjoy the trek, you will enjoy the view, you will enjoy everything, but ultimately the damage that we are building on this ecosystem is unrepairable. Like, imagine what is the condition of all those horses which is happening. So I also promote these type of ecotourism activities, but on the on in a way they are impacting on the cost of environmental damage. It is not necessary. So we have to stop this unplanned, poorly managed tourism. This is the first threat. Then the resource exploitation and habitat loss. Like, many of these biodiversity hotspots are the resource for important renewable source like coal, like mica, aluminium. All these things are very much easily available. So the government is giving leases to exploit all these resources from this region, but unregulated resource exploitation and habitat loss will ultimately impact all these species. Then deforestation, you all know the impact. Urbanization and population explosion, overgrazing, unsustainable agriculture. We are converting all these jungles into agricultural land. This is another problem. Then mining and industrial expansion. This I have already given as an example. The next term is biodiversity cool spots. Now, just like hotspot, we have cool spots. Now, what are the cool spots? They are defined as the world's last refuge where high number of the threatened species still persist. All those areas where the threatened species are only available are said to be a cool spot. Now, this could be the result of protection or because of some intact habitat that has not been cleared yet. So all the threatened species has confined to that small region is said to be the biodiversity cool spot. So one such biodiversity cool spot, let's say in India, is Western Ghats. Outside Western Ghats, you will hardly find any species living and existing there. So some cool spots which are identified in the world are the Amazonian rainforest, Andes mountain, tundra and boreal forest of Russia and North America. Basically they are the temperate forest. जो temperate forest होते हैं ना, high latitude में मिलते हैं, the one which are found somewhere around 60 to 65 degree north and south. These are the part of the biodiversity cool spots. Then what are hope spots? There is one more term which is being highlighted, is hope spot. So it is defined as an area of ocean that needs a special protection because of the wildlife and the significant underwater habitats. So hope spot is linked to ocean. Hotspot linked to the areas which are having endemic species. Cool spots, the area where all the threatened species are confined. And then the hope spot are the species in the ocean. So at present, we have given protection to only 1% of the ocean in the world. Only protection to 1%. So if we can declare the parts of the ocean as hope spots, it can help us in tackling even the oceanic conservation and the marine protection, which can ultimately help us in developing the sustainable development of the oceans. Like in India, very recently, this is a very important fact even for your prelims, Andaman and Nicobar Island and Lakshadweep Island have been recently named as the new hope spots because their ecological conservation is very much important, right? So the International Union for Conservation of Nature and Mission Blue, which is an organization that is involved in the study of ocean, declares any part of the ocean as hope spot. So since it is run by IUCN, this becomes very much important. Okay. Then what is the significance of biodiversity conservation? Why it is important? First, the ecological roles that the biodiversity play. So what are the different type of roles that biodiversity play? First, I guess guys, I am facing a troubleshoot with my internet. Very good morning, Saku. Okay, I guess it is working now. The significance of biodiversity. Now, first up is the important ecological roles that all the biodiversity plays in our life. Like they help us in maintaining the balance. So every ecosystem, beside extracting its need, it also contribute something useful to the organisms. So all organisms play a very important role on planet Earth. They are somewhat related to one or the other activity which is ultimately linked to some other activity. Like a grass will feed a deer, then a deer will feed the tiger, and then the tiger is the prime predator of that ecosystem. So this connection, this role, the ecological role of biodiversity is very much important. Then the significance of biodiversity conservation is also important for maintaining the cycle. The species capture and store energy. They produce and decompose organic materials that help to cycle water and nutrients throughout the ecosystem, fix atmospheric gases and regulate the climate. This is the maintaining role of the biodiversity. It helps to regulate the climate. It helps to regulate the atmospheric gases. Yes. Then hotspot ecosystem. Now this hotspot is as a significance. So it helps in soil formation, reducing pollution. Like there are many species that helps in soil formation, earthworms and all other insects. Then the species that help in reduction of pollution, your trees, your algae in the ocean, they filter then protection of land, water and air resources. Then these functions are also important for an ecosystem and human survival. Then agrobiodiversity. So biodiversity is also important for maintaining our agriculture. It has a straightaway significance with our agriculture. Like, one important aspect of biodiversity is the crop diversity, which is also called as the agrodiversity. Then why it is further important to conserve the biodiversity? It is a reservoir of resources. Now, because of the different biodiversity that is present on the planet, different type of resources, we are straight away dependent on all these biodiversity, like food, pharmaceutical, cosmetic products, etc., etc. We are straight away dependent on them. Then social cohesive roles, like many communities, culture, they are coexisting with the surrounding, the tribal belt of our country. They are straight away dependent on their surrounding, their biodiversity. So the resources provided by the biological diverse environment, therefore it performs a very important social role as well. So it helps them in their societal build-up, like the concept of sacred groves. Are you aware of the concept of the sacred groves? ये sacred groves क्या होते हैं? The part of the forest which the tribal believes that they have the cultural integration with that part of the forest. So that is known as the sacred groves. Then the biodiversity also becomes important because it increases the resilience of the communities. Like, for example, if there is one typical type of a plant that is completely extinct from an area, don't you think the primary consumers of that plants, which were dependent on that single plant, will have to shift to some other options? So in a way, different diverse population of plants and animals, they kind of increase the resilience of the communities and to reduce their vulnerabilities, which can absorb any kind of shock such as climate change, natural disasters, etc. So if you have one species available in a region, whether it is plant or animal, it is less likely to survive in case of any extreme event. Like, for example, now this is what we can learn from the nature. हमने करा था ना, lions. All the lions are kept at one place. So all the lions are breeding among themselves. So जब भी interbreeding species होती है, so there is the same genes that are revolving. So there is less genetic diversity that will happen. There will less genetic diversity that will happen in that region. So lions are interbreeding among the same genes, which will make them more prone to diseases, which will make their population to diminish over the period of time. Okay, so this is why the diversity is important. और अभी चीता के लिए भी we are doing the same thing. We are following the South African model of cheetah conservation. we are following the South African model for the cheetah conservation, where we will move them in meta population. What is meta population? We will try to breed them with different genetic diverse cheetahs, so that they develop a genetic diversity and they are less likely to fall ill. इन सारे lions में 2 साल पहले आपने सुना होगा, there are lions that were dying because of some virus. So what was that virus? Canine distemper virus, CDV, canine distemper virus. So are you understanding that why it becomes important for conserving the biodiversity? Then the biodiversity loss can increase the incidence and distribution of certain infectious disease which are lethal for the children. That means the children of those biodiversity, the cubs, in our example, the cheetah cubs. Then what are the causes for biodiversity loss? So if we analyze the cause can be divided into natural cause and the anthropogenic cause. So first we will see natural cause. So how the biodiversity can be wiped naturally? By some disasters like wildfires, hurricanes, floods, volcanic eruptions that can destroy the habitats and the wildlife population. Then the climate change. The natural variation in climate have occurred throughout the Earth's history, leading to shifts in the ecosystem. So the change in the climate has also impacted different biodiversity at different places. Like there are many species which used to exist earlier which no more exist now. Some of it is because of the natural climate change which is happening. Like one such species, mammoth. Yaad hai? Have you seen that movie Ice Age? So there was a elephant that used to exist in the Cretaceous period that used to have a very long tusk, and the build of that animal was way too high. अब उस टाइम तो humans नहीं थे, उस टाइम तो technology नहीं था. Then why all these species got extinct? The reason was natural climate change. So climate change happened even naturally. Okay. Then disease outbreaks. So we all know that over the period of time, there are some diseases that has naturally spread, and there are some diseases which are deliberately spread. Like the Chinese virus, you all know that how it is, a recent research shows that it was a deliberate attempt of China. Then the disease outbreak. So all these diseases which are spreading, like very presently monkeypox, like Marburg virus, Ebola, Zika. Now don't you think that all these viruses are in news because they are impacting, or they are coming from the animals to the humans? But don't you think there can be some viruses that even spread among the biodiversity of a place, like some plant viruses, some tree viruses, the bacteria, the diseases that can spread in plants? And then some geological events are also responsible for the biodiversity loss, like the tectonic shifts, geological upliftment, land subsidence, which can change the habitat distribution and survival of wildlife. It also includes the meteorite or the meteorite showers. It is believed that the dinosaur got extinct because of a meteorite strike. Yes or no? So the next natural cause are natural climate variability. Like naturally the features like El Nino, La Nina, all these changes that are happening in the rainfall patterns, in the temperature, sea surface temperature, it also impacts the wildlife population as well as the ecosystem. Then geological and ecological history. So historical events like ice age, continental drift, it is the same point, almost repetitive in nature. Then variation in rainfall. So a natural fall in the annual precipitation also triggers different changes at different place. All right, like this is what you are seeing here. The variation in rainfall can impact the hibernation of many mammals, can impact the hibernation of reptiles, amphibians, insects, etc. Then there are some anthropogenic causes as well. Now, what do you mean by anthropogenic causes? The man-made causes that ultimately impact the biodiversity loss. The first important anthropogenic cause is habitat loss and fragmentation. Just hold on. So the kind of destruction that we are creating, the loss in the habitat, the deforestation, urbanization, land conversions, converting the forest land into agricultural land, all these are one important reason why we are losing our habitat and the biodiversity. Then pollution. Another important reason is pollution. So air, water, soil pollution from human activity can also impact your wildlife. It has a straight impact on the wildlife. Then invasive species. Now what are invasive species? Basically all the species that has been introduced from outside and which is impacting the native species of that place are known as the invasive species. So this is also one of the major causes. I will elaborate on the invasive species in a much elaborated manner in the upcoming slide. Okay, so this as a cause will elaborate, don't worry. Then the genetic pollution, like the hybridization that we are doing, mixing up of so many things. For example, we are now changing the genetic variations of natural growing crops, like we are changing the vegetables, we are changing, genetically modifying the crops, making them drought resistance, making them insect resistant. Now all this that we are changing at a genetic level can also have an impact on the biodiversity. Like for example, we have introduced BT cotton and we were growing BT cotton, but the regular production of cotton because of this BT cotton has almost next to zero now, and which ultimately has resulted fall in the cotton exports from India. Now we are no more exporting cotton, but rather importing cotton from different other countries. Then the anthropogenic cause, the illegal wildlife trade. Now according to FATF, after drugs and other narcotic substances, after drugs, wildlife trade is the second biggest illegal activities in terms of the monetary value attached. So after drugs, that means सबसे ज़्यादा अगर तस्करी किसी चीज़ की होती है, that is illegal wildlife trade. So hunting and poaching is on in different places, different habitats, which ultimately is resulting in the biodiversity loss. So on an average 2.5 to 9 per kg is the value of the pangolin scales. So they have a very high demand in different parts, and it can range up to 200 USDs per kg. Now imagine 200 USDs, that means it is close to 16,000 rupees. Okay, when it comes to the calculations. So one animal skin can cost you 16,000. So imagine how many animals that you will kill for this. Then rising man-animal conflicts. So as we are reducing the natural habitats, we are creating habitat fragmentation, we are doing deforestation. The problems like forest fire, droughts, all these things are rising. Along with that, man-animal conflict. Like leopard is very soon will be declared as a domesticated cat because it is so common in our neighborhood. Every now and then you will find a leopard coming and attacking humans, a leopard coming attacking the native animals, domesticated animals, etc., etc. Then hunting and poaching. Unregulated hunting and poaching causes a major threat to the wildlife, and both of these points are interlinked. Illegal activities involves hunting and hunting involves illegal activities. Both of them are linked. This is another cause for the biodiversity loss. Then what will be the consequence? How it will impact the loss of biodiversity, how it can impact? First, loss of food security. Like I have already explained that how even killing tigers can impact pollination. There is a direct link between how tiger can impact pollination. You can understand that in the earlier part of this video. Maybe when I'll stop the stream, you can watch that part. This is a very informative video, guys. If you want to write answers on your GS3 environment, this session is inclusive of everything. So it will help you to grab all important points at one place to write answers. And for this effort, guys, I request if you can give me a like and you can share this video with your friends as well. So food security. So the loss of biodiversity will straight away impact the food security, availability of pollination, availability of fishes, agricultural productivity, everything will hamper because of the loss of biodiversity. You know that even the loss of the insect population also can impact crops of or many type of crops. That means not all insects are harmful for the crops. There are some insects that assist their growth. So destruction of the biodiversity at such a micro level will also impact the food security. Then economic loss. So the kind of economic loss that we will face from this will be too huge. The cost will be very high. For example, the biodiversity loss because of which the tourism industry, forestry, fisheries, pharmaceutical, all these revenue based industries will have will have their job cuts. There will be disruption of the ecological balance. So what regular balance is created, the nature has created, the complete balance among the ecosystem, the interconnectedness of each population, each species will result in collapsing of the complete ecosystem. I guess guys, there is again a disruption happening in my internet. So the next point is increased vulnerability to the climate change. So the biodiversity loss will further reduce the ecosystem resilience. It will increase the susceptibility to the climate change impacts. Then there will be a loss of genetic diversity. Then with the extinction of species, there will be a kind of genes that are extinct with the same species. Like for example, the Javan tiger. The tiger which was earlier found in Java, it is completely extinct from this earth. Now we cannot now revive the genes of the Javan tiger. We cannot have that genetic diversity available. So this is what we can say, that it is a loss of genetic biodiversity. Then increased risk of infectious diseases. With the loss of biodiversity, the transmission of zoonotic disease can also increase. What are zoonotic disease? All the disease that transfer from animal to man. Okay, so all such diseases are called as the infectious diseases. So as an ecological balance, it is very important to maintain that balance so that we can save ourselves from any kind of genetic diversity or the genetic diseases that spreads through the genetic diversity. And if you have a loss recorded in the genetic diversity, there will be a more chance of such infections being transmitted from the wildlife to humans. Then the loss of biodiversity will further result in the loss of resilience and adaptability. Our natural ecosystems will be less resilient to fight any change, or less resilient to fight and basically to tackle any change in the environmental condition. Like if we destruct a forest, the resilience towards or resilience of that forest against a cyclone will be next to zero now. So earlier all the important species, they were getting the protection from the dense forest, but now once we are clearing the forest, a cyclone that will come will have a huge impact in that area and then ultimately will hamper the forest as well, or the species as well. So the loss of biodiversity will further decrease the resilience and adaptability. Then the social and political conflicts, it can further trigger some conflicts in different communities. Like you know that forest is a source of livelihood, and within a forest there are many tribes that survive. So when there is a habitat shrinking that will happen, the dependence of all these tribes on that forest will increase. With more dependence, there will be a more chances of the social and the political conflicts that can start. Like if India is destructing the forest in a national park which is transboundary, like some part of the forest is in India and some part is in Bhutan. Let's say India start destructing the forest which is in India. Don't you think it will have a negative impact on Bhutan? So it can create a political struggle with Bhutan, or there can be a political problems that can start with Bhutan. All right. Then disrupted ecological feedback. This is another consequence of the loss of biodiversity. So this loss of biodiversity can further impact the critical interconnection among the diversity. Like, for example, if one species is extinct from one area, don't you think the species which is dependent on that earlier species for its prey will also be impacted? Their population will further start falling. So it can change the predator-prey interactions. It can change the nutrient cycling. It can change the energy flow, and then it can have a long-term cascading effects on the complete ecosystem. So this is the consequence of the loss of biodiversity. Then what could be the solution, or what could be the way forward, how we can restore this? Now, if you know the solution, if you know the problems, coming to the solution becomes a little easy. So the conservation and habitat protection, this is something that you can do. You can conserve it, you can work on the habitat protection, then sustainable land use and resource use, like using the resources in such a way so that it will have a less long-term intergenerational impact. Agriculture, forestry, fishing, we can minimize the habitat destruction and over exploitation. Then combating legal wildlife trade, which is the biggest problem, okay, impacting the legal wildlife trade. So strengthening law enforcement, internal cooperation, combating wildlife trafficking, all these things can happen, can help in combating illegal wildlife trade. Then using geospatial information, you can add these points. Using technology, like presently we can use even drones to tackle illegal weapon trades. अच्छा, ये सब तो हमने बिजली चोरी और ऐसी चीज़ों में भी यूज़ कर लिया है. Like in UP, the government is monitoring through the drones that what all household are using the illegal methods to, as a electricity theft. So why cannot we use this in the forest? Then restoration and reforestation. That means we have to take care of all the important areas that are now being destructed. We have to restore them, and then reforestation program. Planting more trees in that region is also a solution that can help in conserving biodiversity. It can also help. Then climate change mitigation and adaptation, like all are measures which can tackle the global warming, the greenhouse effect, which can enhance the ecosystem resilience, can further help us to adapt to all the changes which are happening. Then strict law enforcement. This is something which is required. We need a strict law enforcement, especially for the areas like land use policy, in hunting, illegal hunting, in illegal deforestation, illegal land use change. Then strict law enforcement on all the polluting industries. which can hamper the livelihood of many. So we need to keep a check on all these areas so that with the strict law enforcement, so that we can minimize the biodiversity loss. Then envisaging One Health concept. Now what is this One Health concept? So there is right now a need to rethink and reimagine one health for all living organisms. Like respecting the life of every living organism is important so that we can maintain that balance, which also include even your microscopic life. Even the microscopes, the bacteria play a very important role in our natural ecosystems, especially in agricultural systems. Then further research, good scientific research, monitoring programs, technological innovations, all these things can help. Then integration and conservation of policies, incorporating biodiversity consideration into land use planning, development policies, decision making, good policy inaction, and then implementation. All these things can help us in minimizing the biodiversity loss. Then guys, one of the biggest problem that any biodiversity conservation in present world it holds is the invasive alien species. Now what are these species? These are some species which do not belong to one native environment, or in other words, they have been introduced from a foreign environment. Like I would like to give you some examples of invasive species in India. Like there are many. There is one, Procipherus julifera. It is a scientific name. In a regular name of this tree that I am saying is Kikar. Kikar ka ped. It is very common in the northern India, in Haryana, Punjab, Uttar Pradesh. This is very common. It is having a little pointy needles, and also it has the branches have spikes and thorns. So that means this tree, even cattle do not graze on this tree. Now when Britishers were cutting down our forest, under the pressure from the people that you are cutting our forest, you are cutting our resources, and they also wanted to showcase this, that we have grown trees here. So they started planting this tree, Kikar. Now what is the importance of this Kikar? This Kikar can grow very easily in any harsh climate. It doesn't require any care. Plus it reproduces very fast. That means it grows very fast. However, this is an invasive alien species. That means it has been introduced from some foreign environment to India. Then what does this Kikar do? It will make the pH of the soil very acidic. So it does not allow the other species to survive in that soil. So the population of Kikar will spread very fast. Then the roots of Kikar, it penetrates down inside, deep down inside the soil. So this penetration, it sucks all the water from the underground, and when it is sucking all the water, what is the result? The result is that the groundwater level where the Kikar is found falls very significantly. It falls very significantly. So this is why Kikar is an invasive species and does not amount to or allow other species to grow in the nearby periphery. All right. Then there are many, like eucalyptus. You must have seen this eucalyptus tree. वो होता है ना विक्स की स्मेल आती है, it smells like your Vicks vapor rub. So this is also not a species which is available, or it was in India. It was introduced from Australia to India. Now there are many such even species of fishes, species of animals which are invasive, which are either introduced by human intentionally or accidentally into the places outside its natural range. So invasive species can cause a great economic and environmental harm in that area. All right. Now, to have the ability to rapidly spread and negatively impact the native species, they severely impact the local ecosystem. And realizing the importance of invasive species, guys, it has also been included in international frameworks. Like there is a HE target, biodiversity target 9, which is part of UN Sustainable Development Goal 15, life on land, that address all the issue. Okay, so India ranks second most invasive cost breeding country globally. That means after United States, India is the country where all the invasive species are brought in. Then it is estimated that there is a overall cost of rupees 8.3 trillion that Indian economy has costed because of the presence of invasive species. Like for example, in a place where kikar is grown, you have less water table. That means you have to spend money on creating necessary water arrangements for that area. तो पैसा लगा ना. So this is what it is calculated, that over the last 60 years, a total $8.3 trillion have been spent, or it has been impacted. The impact is so severe to Indian economy, and there are around 330 invasive alien species in India, and that out of them 10 have been inflicted significant economic damage to the country, and out of 10, guys, one is kikar. Like there is one more invasive species which was in news very recently. In Srinagar Dal Lake, there is one fish that is been introduced in Srinagar Dal Lake. So that fish is impacting the fish population of the other fishes. So other fishes, the population is diminishing in the Dal Lake. So there is an urgent need to tackle invasive species. So guys, right now the time is up for the today's lecture. I will continue this on next Saturday. Okay, I will continue this discussion on next Saturday. We will take it from here only. But before signing off for today's session, if anyone who is thinking of joining UPSC preparation, you are starting the UPSC preparation, you can come along with Sriram IAS. At Sriram IAS, there is a comprehensive batch which is running. You can use this code Srirams. You can use this code, and with this code you will get a flat 25% off on all your coverage. It includes prelims, mains, interview, answer writing, mentoring session, optional. So all these optionals are also available at Sriram's IAS at Unacademy platform. So you can come and join us. You do not forget to use this code Sriram, and I will again come next Saturday. The timings will remain same, 10 to 12:30. I have already taken international relations for the mains this year. All international relations, there are 3 videos. You can find that video in the playlist which is attached to the link is attached in the description box. All right, so you can watch those videos. This complete month we will be doing environment and ecology, like we have done today ecosystem and environment and questions related to that. We have seen that. And then I have started with the biodiversity and conservation, and so on. We will cover all other important necessary topics in the upcoming session. And tomorrow you have one more session. Sanat sir will come up and he will take your session from, he takes generally these areas: economy, science and tech, art and culture, and miscellaneous. So thank you very much, guys. Do not forget to hit like on this video and share this video with your friends.